Hi everyone, Dr. J here. So you've made it for you've made it through the first 4 weeks of an online class. For those of you who are new to online, probably quite a different experience than showing up every day, but you guys are doing great with participation and getting things in on time. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about the different types of microbes, some of the things they can do to us, how they are transmitted. Now we're going to delve into 4 different papers on different specific microbes. And so this week what you have going on is basically do your exam. It's due Wednesday, and then you can start reading the first paper. You also might want to introduce yourself to your group, and then starting next week, the 6th week of class, you will start beginning your discussions on the paper in small groups, and each paper will culminate with a what I call news and views write-up. So let's talk about all of this. First thing is, week 5 is where you want to look for all of this information. If you have not read a primary literature before, if this is new to you, it's going to take you some time. So I have a how to tackle a research article for you to look over. Research articles sometimes are written kind of dry. They have lots of different sections, and it's important to understand how to tackle them. For instance, you won't be reading a lot of the materials and methods until you're using it to understand the results section. I have for each, let's just, go down here. The first paper you're going to read is about the protozoa Toxoplasma, or Toxoplasma gondii, and I have made lecture videos. So you can click on this to give you a little bit of background, a little bit about the organism and about the methods that are used in each paper, because that's what's really new to most people, is unless you've worked with this organism or worked in a research lab, you probably don't know the techniques they're using. So I suggest that you watch these videos. See, there's the PowerPoint. And again, it just talks about Toxoplasma. I try to give you some definitions of terms you might know. Here I'm talking about the ELISA assay, the behavioral assays, how mice act, what PCR is, microRNAs, HPLC. So it's a lot about the techniques, because I figured that's what people don't know about. Your group your job as a group is to help each other understand the different figures and the data, discuss, do you agree with the conclusions they came to, do you have questions about the results? So I want this to be a very dynamic, interactive, I guess I don't need to show you all of that, discussion each week. And the home page that you have right now, where you found this video, which the link will be right here once I make it, kind of describes what I'm talking about. Okay. So what you're going to have do each Tuesday, except for the first one, is what we call a journal article write-up. Okay. This is where I'm asking you to go through the literature, that paper yourself, and try to figure out what the authors are doing, what kind of questions they're asking, how they're answering these questions, and their conclusions. We'll look at that in just a second. That's due Tuesday night, so that by Wednesday you need to start posting and contributing to the group discussion. So that might be, maybe you summarize one of the figures. Maybe you discuss some of the findings and ask questions. This isn't meant for you to take parts of your homework and just repost them. This is meant to be a discussion, okay? You will work on that discussion through the following Tuesday. So you have a full 7 days for your group to discuss. And I'll show you in a minute the grading rubric. I expect you to be participating almost every day of those 7 days. That doesn't mean you have to be on the computer for hours, okay? That means you're set aside an hour, half an hour, you're reading your fellow classmates' posts, you're answering questions, you're adding to the discussion, you're finding outside literature that helps you guys understand what these primary literature papers are talking about. After the discussions end, you will have something called a news and views write-up that's due each Friday. Okay, so this is kind of an every other week thing. Due the Friday after the discussion concludes, and that's where you're showing me your writing skills and your understanding of the paper. So let's talk first about the groups. So you guys have been randomly split into 4 groups. You can find your names here. If you go to the People tab, and I believe this is how you do it, and go to the Group tab, right, you're going to click on your discussion group, and that's going to give you a whole nother list of home announcements, and this is where, I don't know if I can actually do this, let's see, visit group homepage. So mine looks a little different than yours, but you're going to post just in your discussion group, so not in the whole class. So here's discussions for group 1, and you can click on the plus discussion, add a discussion, and label it something informative like summary of figure 1 or results about, I don't know, something, so that the thread makes sense. Excuse me. So give it a nice title, post your discussion, and then just like we've had discussions before, other people can reply to them. Again, do this in your group, not for the whole class. Now, once I'm here, oops. Let me cancel this. Go back to our class. I love my internet. Okay. Let's go back to where we start. Okay. It's very weird to explain this without people asking questions. All right, let's go back to our week 5. Okay. So, or let's go back to 6 and 7. Toxo. So the introduction page is what you're going to see on the home page. And what I have done for you is I have given you an example of a journal article write-up for this paper. So you do not have to do a journal article write-up that are normally due on Tuesdays for Toxo. I have done it for you to hopefully help you understand what I'm looking for. And this is going to take forever. All right. Never mind. Let's just look at the assignment itself. I don't know why these are all. Okay. Journal article. Write-up assignment. So what I want you to do on the weekends, before each week you to start discussing a paper, is this assignment that says a little bit about the article. For each paper, you need to do this. And I want it in this format because it makes it easiest for me to grade. Okay? So you're going to have section A. And this is section A you might do last because this is the overall about the article. So what questions are the authors attempting to answer? Right? So what biological questions are they answering? What are they looking at? How did they go about answering these questions? So what experimental procedures did they use? What are their conclusions? How does this you are to put this in a larger context of medical microbiology. So what's the whole point of this? Why is this paper important? How's it contributed to the field? So sometimes I'll give you review articles. Those might help you put it in the big picture. The other thing I want you to think about is, what is the logical next step? So what would you do next? So hopefully you read these papers and go, okay, that was really cool. I wish they had looked at this, or I wish they had looked at this, or why didn't they do this, or I want to know about this. Okay, that's what I want for the logical next steps. You don't have to design experiments with details, but talk about what you would want them to look at next. This is the section that I grade the hardest for this assignment. Section B, for every figure and table, you need to do these 4 things. So I would like you to put figure 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, and figure 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Identify the biological question being asked for that figure. Identify and explain the technique. Now you don't have to go into all the details, but I want to know that you understand what PCR is and why they are using it. What is the result of the experiment? Okay, so give me, what was the take-home message? And what can be concluded? And again, this is different than the result. So the result might be that the mouse showed no change in behavior. Well, what does that mean? What's the conclusion? Okay, so put it into some context. You can do this in about 4 to 6 sentences. So this, I'm not asking for major writing, but I want to see that you know what's going on as best you can. Again, I don't expect you to understand every detail, but this is where you come up with questions. And I've had students write these and then write, like in red, questions they had, which is a great way to help them participate in class discussion, right? Because, hey, I got this, but I still don't understand this. And maybe your classmates can help you with that. Part C is write down 3 questions you have. Okay, so I really look at these as well, and these are great ways, again, to participate in the discussion. So maybe it's something you don't understand, maybe it's why did they do this, maybe it's how does this really relate, or how did they get that conclusion? Questions you have about the paper. Again, you don't have to do it for the first one because I want to show you what I expect, but for papers 2, 3, 4, you will do one of these. They're due Tuesday night. Okay. Then you go to your group's page, you work on discussions, and there is a discussion grading rubric. Okay. Most of you participated just nicely in this first few weeks discussions, but I'll tell you a lot of your discussions were not very meaty. Okay, saying, "Well, that's cool. I never thought of that," is not going to fly now. Okay. So let's look at this discussion grading rubric. You can earn up to 25 points each week. 100 points total for the discussions for these papers. That's a huge chunk of your grade, like 20%. And I really expect, like I said, about daily participation. Come on. Maybe I can just download it. Okay. We'll get it here. So I have this whole big chart I use to grade your discussions daily, and then at the end of the week-long discussion from the Wednesday to the following Tuesday, I go and add up scores. So what you're trying to show me is 1, content understanding. So I need to know that you can discuss, explain with your classmates content from the paper, okay? Using correct terminology, accurate explanations, thought that goes beyond the obvious. So I want to see your analytical skills. Relevance of posts promotes further discussion. So I don't want you just to barf out everything you know about the paper. That is not a discussion. Plus, hold some stuff back. If you understand it all, great. Then when other people have questions, you can go and answer, right? You'll look so super smart. Posts that explain information, make sure you include either page numbers or figure or table numbers, okay, so that we can reference what you're talking about. Posts that are related to the reading, replies to others' posts that shows they have understood and thought about the previous posts. Okay, so again, this, hey, that's great, I agree with you, not going to fly. Okay, I want you to further the discussion. Now, you can put those sometimes, absolutely, but they're just not going to count for points for your discussion. Okay? Thought-provoking, right? A discussion, be like, we're sitting around and we're talking about this paper, but yet we get to do it in our PJs or whatever, or with a glass of beer, right? Okay. Language convention mechanics, use correct vocabulary. Use and define terms. So if you find an article, which you're going to have to, that applies, make sure you're defining vocabulary that we might not know. Like, I learn a ton from you guys' discussions. So use references if you're finding stuff outside. Make sure you're using the vocabulary correctly and explaining any jargon. Big one. 8 of the 25 points. Posts well distributed throughout the discussion period. So if you only contribute a couple days, or if you only do it at the start or only at the finish, you're not going to get full points. Mark it on your calendar. Make a little checkbox on your calendar. I have participated in a discussion today. Okay, it doesn't really take that long, but it's so important to help everyone participate and help everyone understand these papers. I chime in once in a while. I definitely chime in if I think there's something incorrect. If there's a question that's gone unanswered for a while, I will try to chime in, and I will give you guys updates, especially in the first couple papers, like, hey, you're doing a good job, or nope, you're going to get not acceptable or below expectations because you don't have any meat to your posts, or you're not participating enough. So I will help guide you a little bit, but I really read these to look at your interactions. Throughout that week, you have to share at least one additional article that contributes to the understanding of the primary article. So the primary article is the one we're reading, and the article has to be another primary literature. So not a news article like we've posted before. Primary literature means something with data, materials, and methods where they actually collected the data themselves, presented it, and analyzed it. Review articles are not primary literature. They're called secondary. So they're taking other people's and summarizing. And review articles are awesome to read. If you find a good one, share it for sure. But note that you also need to go beyond the paper we're reading and bring in some additional research. So maybe there's some newer research that's happening. Maybe a question you had, you went and found the answer in another research article. Those are wonderful things to share. So this rubric is how I grade you for your weekly discussions. All right. Again, at the conclusion of each paper discussion, you'll be writing up what I call a news and views article. Goodness gracious. So let's look at that assignment. What's the chance that it's going to load? Oh, maybe. Okay, so the news and views. You're going to have different sections. Don't label these sections. I'm going to show you an example of the news and views in a second. But there are some formatting information. Okay, so you're going to create a title between 30 to 60 characters. That means letters, numbers, spaces. should be an exciting title, something that catches the viewer's or reader's attention. You're going to have a lead. Again, 12-point font and bold. This lead is basically kind of like an abstract, but it's pretty short. 20 to 60 words. Okay, 1 to 3 sentences. Write this and write your title last. Okay, this is summarizing the main points of the article that you're writing. It has to be interesting to make me want to read it. The news and views, maybe I wrote that up here, is going to explain some aspect of the article. Okay, you cannot explain everything in the word limit that I give you. So take something that you think is most interesting, one of the most interesting results and conclusions, and discuss that. Okay, you'll write a title about that, you'll write a lead, a little abstract, you'll write a text no longer than 600 words. Okay, it's short. It's this little summary that people read. These are published in Nature, and they're like, oh, that's cool, I want to go read this. So it's a way for the journal to highlight an article that they're publishing and to bring in more readers. So one of the things you'll notice about primary literature is it's repetitive. Okay? Things that they talk about in the intro, you'll see in the conclusion, and you might see in the results. That's because a lot of people read primary literature as individual sections. So I might go in and read the intro and say, not interested. Or I might go in and just read the discussion. All these sections have to stand alone, so you have to be a little bit repetitive. That's my daughter. This is on camera. So the overall goal of this section is to summarize a main point take-home message, not everything in the paper. And you're going to choose the best data that supports the take-home message. So I'm going to give you a little video on how to create your own data by stealing data from the paper. So you're not going to make up data. You're actually going to take chunks of their results and put together your own figure. Make sure you have some background information. People jump in and start talking about a microbe without introducing why the heck should we care about this? What is this organism or disease or whatever we're looking at? Give it a little bit of context. You must include in-text citations for background information and including when you're referencing the paper that we are reading. You're going to show data from the paper by making your own figure. We'll talk about that in a minute. You're going to make your own figure legend. So not a typical figure legend where this means this and this means this. It's more of a summary that I can read that figure legend, look at the figure data that you're presenting, and understand what's going on. If you use a table as some data, tables get a title, but they do not get a figure legend. You must refer to your figures in the text. So don't assume that I'm going to look at the figure at the appropriate time. Tell me when to look at that figure. And you're going to number your figures starting with number 1. So even if you're taking data from figure 3 in the paper, it's going to be your first figure. Okay? And there'll be another video that shows you a little bit about how to make these figures. Make sure you include the number of words at the end of your article. Read this. Here's a checklist for figures. Here's the little grading rubric. And here's an example of format. Okay, so I've got a title, I've got a lead, I've got my main body of the paper, the text. I have made a figure, right? I've referenced where I've gotten that data from, okay? Even though I know what you're writing about, you have to do this. This is really good practice. This one I decided to include a couple figures because it's such important data that I made up. So that's your news and views. In week 5, let me just let it, let me make sure I'm going through everything I wanted to go through. Okay. In week 5, I have posted an actual news and views. Okay. So this is where I based this assignment off of. You can Google news and views from Nature and get a whole ton of these articles if you want to look at how they're written. Oh, stop. Okay. So you see, you don't have to do this fancy 3-column format, but they've got cool article title, Gut Microbes Augment Neurodegeneration. And then they have this little lead here. And then they talk about the paper, they refer to the figure, and in this case, the news and views articles, they make a figure that illustrates an important concept. And I'll give you a hint, though you are not going to do this for our news and views, it is an option for one of the questions on exam 2. So, if you're reading one of these papers and you're thinking, gosh, it would be really cool if they kind of showed a summary of this graphically, right, with images. Make one. You've already got one of your questions done for exam 2. Remember, look at how I want citations. I hate superscripts, so don't do that. But you do number everything. I don't like things with blah, blah, blah authors because it just takes up room. So take a look at this news and views. It's a nice kind of example of what you're going to do. Theirs are much longer than the ones you're going to write. So it is challenging to keep your writing condensed. Let me see if there's anything else. All right, so example, how to tackle research. Very important. Here's how I want your citations done. Don't lose points on not doing citations right. Here's your journal article write-up, how to write a news and views, discussion rubric. So look all over all of this first week. Meet the people in your group. Here is the first paper you're going to read. I've posted a review, not required for the write-ups at all, just for additional information. Remember, there is an intro methods lecture, example of a journal article write-up, and when we get there, October 5th, which sounds so far away from now, you will submit your first news and views write-up. Second paper we're going to read is about the hygiene hypothesis and using peptides from a helminth. Here you will have a journal article write-up as well as a news and views. The third paper is the relationship between the gut microbiome and depressive behaviors. Really cool stuff. Again, journal article write-up, news and views, intro lecture, and then finally we're going to read a paper about Staphylococcus epidermidis and how it's producing a compound that might be an anti-cancer molecule. Journal article write-up, news and views. There is extra credit available that's due, I believe it's right after Thanksgiving. Exam 2 you can't see yet. Pathogen review paper, right? Yes. That's due finals week. I've give you a, let me make sure before I say, I dropped it behind my desk. I can't see it. I think you have a whole week after the exam and the discussions to write your review paper. I already have someone, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. I'm blanking, sorry. Yes, Adele already picked enterovirus D68D71. You may work with someone on this pathogen paper. or you may pick your own. If you come up with a microbe that you want, let me know and I will start making a list. You guys cannot do the same microbe. And just to let you know, this pathogen paper review is like a News and Views, kind of double the size, or maybe it's a little bigger. Basically, you're picking papers to read, and it has to be at least 2 primary literature papers, so data-driven papers, and you're going to write a News and Views on it, just like you've been doing, but a little bit bigger scope, and that's your final paper for the class. So, anytime you're bored, you can get started on that. All right, I know it was kind of rambly. Hopefully you get the right information out of it that you need, and do good on your exams so that they're easy for me to grade, and I look forward to reading your discussions coming up. All right, bye.